Yep. Oh boy. Jesus. Monday. It's Monday. Weather sucks today. All right. Let's see what we can figure out. Need to finish doing this shit. This might be, this is still a combat action. I would say. Effect Funk List. I'm just hesitating a little bit because I just think that the effects are kind of overcomplicated, but I feel like it has to be this way because it needs to be able to like loop and do stuff like that, and for that it's gonna have to have eternal logic. Oh, this song is so annoying. It's in Swedish, but it's completely unintelligible. You can only like make out some words because it's so poorly pronounced. Like a Japanese person singing Swedish lyrics. From Legend of Mana, it's like the outro. Don't set up the others there. I'll be right back. Hey. Fuck me. Alright. So this entire thing here, this is back. It's... Now it has a back there. The way this should work is that The front should have a reference to the back. Action module. Should I have the back here? That's one way of doing it. So So basically the idea here is that because it has multiple parts, it's way too loud. Because it has multiple parts, there's a front and there's a back. The idea is that it's going to use like a master-slave relationship where you have the front that does all the heavy lifting, and the back just exists in order for the front to set its sprite, pretty much. So every effect that's basically multiple parts should be controlled from one main part, I would say. So the effect, it's like the effect is a controller that contains the objects that represent the spell. So if we cast a barrier, and the barrier consists of two objects, one front part and one back part, that then means that the effect contains those two parts. And all it's really going to do is that we're going to create the effect. The effect is going to create the objects. And after it has created the objects, it's going to assign the second object to the first object so that it has a reference. And then the front object is just going to play out and do its logic. And the effect controller is going to have as little impact or as little as little influence or as little role as possible. The action itself just takes care of it. And the effect is more about like relative positioning and maintaining and destroying the objects when they're done. More than, and also creating new objects at certain intervals. I think this goes in here. Oh, right. Init runs there. Hmm. This is the action module. Oh, I did that again? It's not inside barrier. There. So it has two entity there. I feel like this should take a position. Hello, Joseph. How's it going? Source action. It's not how you set a position anyway. Hello, Alina. How's it going? Jesus Christ. Where was I even? Here. Oh, I don't remember. Is base ran here? I think base runs. And in that case, what does that do? It's just gonna do set position. This is enabled equals false. That's false. I want effects to just be enabled immediately. I don't want to like preload them. Oh boy. Why is everything so hard? I wonder if it should have a source. Because the issue I see here right now is that I have an effect object list there, but because the point here is to delete the effect once the effect is finished playing. And to do that, I need to make checks against this list here. I say something and I forget what I was even saying like 2 seconds later. But yeah, it needs to be able to make checks against the current objects to see if they're still active or not. And they can't, like, for me, the ideal situation here, an LOT effect doesn't inherit from anything, so it's just an effect. But ideally, the easiest way to do this would just to be to give the objects themselves access to this list of objects. Or maybe not. Maybe it should just be that they become inactive. Like they disable themselves. And the reason for that is because the objects have to be removed from the object list in the main controller as well. So just deleting them, like having the objects delete themselves here, is a bad idea. Because the effect needs to delete them when they're done. Play effect, I think, isn't really necessarily. I'm just thinking of having like an update. 'Cause this has changed a bit. We have play effect, end effect, destroy effect. Slated for deletion. So that's how it works here. Action module has ended. So here we run effect update. We say active effects list dot play effect. And yeah, it has to be like this because I don't know if I can separate it though, actually. The reason for that is because we have LOT object list. See, here I run an update on all of the objects. But I guess... yeah, okay. The update doesn't really do that much. But here we run action module.update. And the issue with that is that running this means that we're also running this. Because every effect is also an object. So if I just run through object lists, we're also running the effects. So I might have to make some kind of check here, like if active effect list dot contains, but I'm not a fan of this. No, see, I can't even do that. It would have to be like for u active effects list dot count active effect list u dot effect object list dot contains LOT object list I. And this is... I hate this. Because what this means is that in order to run any animations, I have to check every object against every active effects by doing a .contains call. And I really don't want to do that. And I think there's only one good solution to this. And that's making another list. So we have an object list, and it's easy to be able to just run the update on the object list. But maybe I can do that. Maybe that's still okay. But that means that in effect update, we cannot run the effects. But that might be okay. I'm actually not really running them at all. Yeah, I don't think I am. But I still think there's a problem. Potentially. Because if I just run them like this, I run each object's update. That means that if someone is attacking, if Ria is using triple stab on an enemy, when she strikes an enemy, it will be completely random whether the barrier comes after that fact in the update. Meaning that if the barrier's update is ran before triple stab, that means that it won't be able to read and update its flashing, like a flashing effect for being struck until the next frame. And that might make it not even able to. Because the way I'm doing it right now is a little... I'm not super sure how I feel about it, but it should be fine. But basically, if you take damage a boolean is set to has taken damage to true. And that boolean is only set for one update. Every update, at the beginning of your update, it gets set to false. So if you get struck, you're set to having been struck for one update. And the idea is then that as that is set, the relevant effects or whatever that might need to read that you have taken damage can do that update. And then next update, it won't be true anymore. But that means that effects and like everything that comes downstream needs to come downstream. So I might need to make another list here of like objects. Like I have, it's called object list already. And I don't really know what to call it. Because it's like non-effect objects. Any object that is more like a physical entity, I guess. Because the effect... I could rename this list. Could call this like an entity list or something. Or the render list, because that's what this is for. It's meant to be able to render everything. But it's a pretty tedious change to change this, to be honest. I think. There's a lot of references. But what it would need is that if something is added to the entity list, it needs to have a determination whether it should also be added to like the effect list or whatever. So it's basically like anywhere that anything gets added to the object list needs additional code to add it to a certain other list. But I'll be right back. What's extra annoying about this is that the reality is that the current active effect list might be like one object. So, because this, I could do this, right? But an effect could be something more later on. And I don't want to run a contains check against everything for every single object that's running an update. That's just stupid. So let's rename this to LOT entity render list. Maybe. I have a relevant object list that I've never used. And now we make a new object list. But then here, and here we are loading. Wouldn't it be nice if objects contained some kind of type? If it had a type, would that be a better solution? Because if it just had a type, then I could just make a type check in the object list and just not run it if it's the wrong type, and then just run it later. Does that make more sense than making an entirely new list? Hello, butt. How's it going? Making a turn-based RPG. Right now, I'm mostly trying to figure out the best way to make effects and stuff. So I'm working on the combat system right now, and you can like attack and stuff, and that's all good. But I'm trying to make spellcasting work, and that needs to create effects and stuff like that. I'm trying to I'm just thinking. This is one of those scenarios where I'm not sure if there's like a right or a wrong answer. I think just adding an enum here. I don't know if there are other object types than object and effect. I don't even know what the last one would be. But this could also be used to be like combat type or like combat object. Because the way things work right now is that certain objects are, because you have like torches and other things like that. Those can be objects, and certain objects like other people, NPCs and shit like that, if those happen to be around when we need to switch into combat, right now the way I'm doing it is just fading them out. But that means that certain objects need to not fade out, so they need to be certain types of objects. So I could have like non-combat object list, or like an object, non-combat object, permanent object, non-combat, permanent, combat object, something like that. And then effect object. I don't think it matters that much. It's just persistent object, something like that. And then effect. And just call it like this. I have entity type. Which I tried using at some point, I think. But let's go with this. That's unfortunately a little annoying, because to set that up, we have to go to the object data modules. And we have to go to the object data module here. And we have to say, instead of it being permanent, it now needs to say LOT object type. As such. And then this is LOT object type. This dot obj type equals obj type. Like that. And this is the worst thing to have to change. There are many issues here that I haven't 100% decided on, because I have a Rhea who is a combat like she is a combat unit, right? But they're like, do I have two objects, two Rheas? Rhea combat, Rhea non-combat. Because I think that's how you want to do it, probably. Because here now, this has to be set to something other than permanent. And it has to be set to non-combat, combat, or persistent. And I think there should just be two Rheas. One should be non-combat, one should be combat. Because it does complicate it if I am to use Rhea. I mean, oh, this is so annoying. it's not like that big of a deal. Because there will be vastly more non-combat objects than there would be combat objects. But it's still kind of annoying that I have to split them into two. I don't think I need to, but... Because here's the thing, right? Like, let's say our main character is standing in a certain position, and then it has to switch into combat. If I'm just going to keep using that same object for combat, that means I have to save its original state and then take that object, fade it back in, move it to another position for using combat, and then combat happens, and then after combat I'm gonna have to fade her out again, reset her position to where she was before and her state, and then resume. Whereas if I have two different objects, one for Rhea exploration, one for Rhea combat, then I can just fade this one out, and then we just place our combat units, and it just works, right? Like they don't have anything to do with each other. I think that's superior, but it is also more annoying to program in a way, or it's more cluttered. Because now I'm gonna have to rename this into something. Object data module database. And it also means repeated information, which is a little annoying. I'm just thinking how I could solve this, because we have a static data thing here. But I could also do this. That's really all I need to do. Because that's the only difference. That's the only thing that differs. There could also be another object type called like dynamic. There doesn't need to be a combat distinction. There just needs to be a non-combat distinction. No, that's wrong too. No. Fuck me. So... Oh! Maybe this is okay. I don't really like this. But I don't really see any better solutions. But wait a second. Not that easy. Because here we're fetching core data. I don't like it. I think I'm gonna do something like this. And see, the reason I don't like it is because the way I am creating objects is via this collection of static classes. This is my database. And in order to access them, I've stored them in a dictionary. And the dictionary is accessed using a vector3 int as a key. And the value that we access is a func or a function. So I'm actually just accessing this. And through that, I return. I create the object via this function. So I have a dictionary that stores constructors, basically. And that makes it hard for me to store combat, like a combat alternative for each object without it becoming cluttered and annoying. So what I think I'm gonna do we're not gonna have a combat data module. What we're gonna say is we're gonna have non-combat and non-combat, combat, dynamic. I don't think there's really any necessity to have this combat designation, but there's got to be non-combat and dynamic for sure. Hello, Reiko, how's it going? I'm fine. I'm working on a turn-based RPG. Right now I'm trying to implement effects so I can play spells and stuff. And now I'm down another rabbit hole where I have to designate objects as combat objects or not. And that's gonna boil down to... Oh my fucking god, dude. I keep reporting it to Twitch, and they keep saying, nope, nothing bad, nothing wrong here, nothing's going on. Nope, it's bad, nothing. No violations, nope. Oh my, well, it's fucking Monday. How are you doing? Day off? Sounds good. I don't have a day off. So now we have to change this to object type. That's going to be LOT object type dot dynamic. Oh, fuck. Basically, the issue is that the way things work is that I have one master list of objects in my main controller. That master list is ran through, and until now I have been doing everything with it, like updating updating all the objects, like what the actions they're doing and stuff like that. And it has been working fine until now, where I want to start having effects. And effects are also objects, so they're also going to belong to the master list, because it's about rendering mainly. But because the effects are also there, that means I can no longer use the list to update objects and their actions and stuff like that, because effects need to come later, because they need to react to movement and to like being attacked and stuff like that. So it needs to happen after. There needs to be an order. So now I have to figure out a solution for that. And my initial solution idea was to, like, I could just make an effect list, which I have, and then every time I try to update an object, I have to check it, like run it in through a, does the effect list contain this thing? And that's terrible. I hate that. Second idea was to make a new list for objects that are not effects. But that would be like 99% of the objects in the object list would be in this new list. Because effects are probably going to be quite scarce in reality. It's mostly going to be like on-demand effects that generate when you cast a spell or something. But you might still have other things like rain or like lightning flashes or whatever. Those kind of things. So there might still be some in the effects list, like perpetually, kind of. But I don't really like that idea of adding even more lists. And my current idea was to simply assign each object a type. As you can see here, I have an enum called effect, non-combat dynamic persistent effect. And that way, instead of like doing a dot contains check between two lists for every single object in a for loop, I can just do if object type does not equal effect, and that's gonna be like a hell of a lot faster. But then the issue is it's kind of segueing into a different issue, which is the distinction between a combat and a non-combat entity as well. Because a non-combat entity, as we enter combat, needs to be removed from the field, one way or another. And it really depends on the scenario, right? Like how that's going to play out. If it's just going to be people running away, or like if there's even a scenario like that in the first place where we really had to clear out like a bunch of peasants or whatever from the battlefield. But anything that doesn't belong needs to be like faded out or something like that. But then we need a distinction for what is an object that needs to be faded out. And that's going to be a non-combat object. But at this, while then we also have a persistent object, which might be like a torch or something. But then there also needs to be some method to like fade objects in or out afterwards too. Because when the combat scenario is over, we're gonna have to transition from the combat scenario to a regular scenario. There are many ways to do that. So the solution that I have now might not even be relevant. So what I'm trying to do now is to set objects that, like our main characters, for example, they're gonna be both combat objects and non-combat objects. And then I have to decide, should I have two different versions? Ones that's just for like cutscenes, exploration, walking around, those kind of things, and then have one other version that's for spawning in for combat. And I think that's how it should be. But if that is the case, then I also need to make that object in the database, and I was just trying to think of a way to maybe make it be less, you know, copy-pasty, because I don't, because I'd have to be like Spearman combat. But I don't like that. No, we do have an object. The object is just a base object, and then we assign components to it. But that's part of it there. Like, what I don't like is, for example, this spearman here. The spearman would be a non-combat unit, but it would also be a combat unit. So if I'm gonna, in its data, assign it an object type as like non-combat or combat or whatever, like it's not gonna be true, like whichever I choose. And if I set it to like, because there's still gonna be like two different objects. You're gonna have a non-combat spearman and a combat spearman. And if I set him in the data as non-combat, then the non-combat one will work correctly, right? But the combat one won't. Otherwise, I have to make two different versions, and that's where we run into like database bloat. So here I'm trying to set him as dynamic, and then if something is dynamic, it depends on where it's being created, and then I'll set it after the fact. That's my current idea. So if it's like in object placement, I click, the object gets created, then it will, in the creation step, it's going to change it from dynamic to combat or non-combat. And then that should be fine. That way I only have to use this one entry in the database. But it's still tedious. And changing things here is the worst. Because these are all just large structs. So if I change like one thing here in the object database module struct, then we have to go through everything and change it. And that's why I've been avoiding adding like a shitload of things here. But the reality is that I feel like so many things would just be dynamic. Like, we have a barrier here. Sure, it's permanent, but it's an effect. Or it's a... yeah, it's an effect. And effects would be persistent. Or would it? But the reality is, I think that when combat like starts or ends, that would probably be preluded by some kind of fade to black. And because of that, I don't actually really need elaborate things. Oh. Ah. I'm just afraid of making this change here and then finding out that there's still a problem. For example, hypothetically, what if I have these effects, right? And I have an object type called effect. I put every effect into the effect list. But what if the effect list already contains an effect controller for rain? Maybe it contains a couple of fires. Maybe it contains, I don't know, some fucking laser beam. Who knows? And that's part of the map. That's part of the environment. And I then go into combat on that same map. And then we create some kind of like shield or whatever that's on an object. And then combat ends with that shield effect up. How do I now end combat and clear out the effects that belong to combat without knowing that it's a combat effect? So that's where I feel like maybe there needs to be another like dynamic effect type as well. Because the same thing is true there, like with the barrier. A barrier, even if it's a spell, it could still be something that's used in a cutscene or something. So, in that scenario, you know, I would still want to be able to use this database entry for the barrier to just be able to like spawn it and have it work. And that's also where things become a little difficult when it comes to like the object's internal function. It would play just by spawning it, it would play the intro, and then it would begin looping. But then it also needs a condition for disappearing. And the easy way is to just make it read the combat module of the object and be like, okay, once you run out of barrier, this is going to I'm just going to run the outro and then dissipate. And then delete myself. But what if it was generated in a cutscene? Then it would need to be a different object type, and it would need to have different variables for when it runs or not. And you would need to be able to access it and tell it what to do and when. Ooh. However, see, it's so complicated because the reality is that I pretty much I'm not sure, but ideally it would be good if there was some kind of, like, if I wrote a scripting language for the level editor. That way someone else, because that has been on the docket the whole time. Just basically writing a nothing complex, just a way of generating a JSON script via the level editor so that you could write like an event. So you could use the level editor to place an object, and then you could write like, this is a cutscene and this is what's going to happen in the cutscene. Then you can say character moves 4 tiles to the left, look up, initiate dialogue, write what's in the dialogue screen, window. You know, that kind of stuff would be ideal to be doable through the level editor, because that way somebody else could work with it. But the reality is that probably nobody else will work with it than me right now. So it's like, if it ever comes to that, because it is an issue with Unity too as well. Like, I do want to move away from Unity, but let's say we were working in Unity, if all the levels and cutscenes and stuff had to be programmed through Unity, that means that nobody else could do it, because you have limited seats with Unity. Otherwise, you have to pay ludicrous amounts of money to have like even I don't know if you even get more than one seat for free. No, yeah, you need plus at least. Yeah. 185 euros per month per seat. So that's the only way to like get around that. By making the game itself the editor. I don't think it would be that hard to do. But it would still be a lot of work. Because all you'd need to do is program a bunch of functions. Then create buttons for it in the editor. And then just generate a JSON with a list of commands. And like timings. And honestly, I am finding it hard to even think of how I would even program it without doing that. Like, how would I program a level that has been completely made in the editor to make objects play certain animations in sequence and stuff like that? Like, I'm not even sure how I would program that on the C# side here. I'd have to program an entire system for it. Like an event system. Or something. But even then, I feel like it would have to be assigned somehow. Via the editor. Perhaps. Because the reality is, I think that's how it generally works. You create some kind of editor in-house, and the editor can create events and stuff like that. And it's not like hard programmed by a programmer, it's... I mean, some of it will be. But I don't know. It's difficult. I want to take a break, but the weather sucks. I think it's even raining. Not sure though. Might go outside anyway. Yeah, I mean, yeah, in a larger setting, you have to do that to some degree at least. But you'd also have programmers dedicated to programming like cutscenes and shit. Eventually, depending on how large the program is or how large it is. But I don't think it would be that bad, because our cutscenes would be simplistic-ish. It would mostly be characters walking around and whatnot and shaking the screen, spawning some objects. It's not, we don't have like elaborate camera angles and complicated animations and stuff like that. So it would mostly just be like a way to script characters to like move based on an event trigger. Either way, Turbo sidetrack. But it was all relevant because it boils down to this issue here with like how do I assign an effect? Like what should it be? Effect dynamic. Because I think an effect would never be non-combat. Because what would an effect be? An effect would be, you know, anything on the screen that might be more complex than just one object. Hmm. Maybe I just don't worry about it. Maybe I just go with it. But I do think... Let's say effect dynamic. But that means that this also needs to have combat, dynamic, persistent, effect. I guess we can just add effect non-combat. So I don't think that's really ever going to be a thing, but I guess it can exist there. Like, whatever. And then this would be effect dynamic. And so would this. And then we can rename this. Back to LOT object list. Some kind of error here, but I can't see it. Whatever. But what we can say here now. Right, this is a late update. Need to go to update. And then here we can say if LOT object list I dot data module dot value dot object type is less than 4. Then it needs to be cast. Can you cast things like this? You can cast 4 into an object type. All right, I'll be right back. You just say less than object type dot effect non-combat. Okay, yeah, you can do a less than comparison like that. No casting needed. So we do that, and then here we do effect update, in which it's not actually doing any updates right now. I know it is doing play effect, but play effect doesn't play the effect. Because I have commented it out. So let's say for effect object list dot count dot action module dot update. There. Action module has ended. This is incorrect. I think. Finish. Action module dot finish has ended. Never called. Okay. Oh. Oh my god. What if I just fuck around for a while and do nothing? Better chair. Oh. Yeah, I didn't feel like it. Oh. See if there have been any dates to any video games. Nothing there, nothing there. Uh, Nothing there. Nothing there. Nothing there. Oh, that's it. Okay. Not much going on, apparently. What's happening here? I looked at this game, but man, I don't know. Can't get into PvP stuff. Da monster breeder. I think I might play Dune like one or two more days or something. I don't think I have more in me. Blueprints actually seems kind of nice, but it felt too expensive for me right now. Yeah, I don't think there's really much. I might just finish System Shock, play System Shock 2, and then pray. Or maybe I'll get to pray first. Because there just is not that much. Going on right now. I might get back to Norland. They're releasing patches that are apparently gonna add a bunch of stuff. Like more housing, upgradable houses, all kinds of stuff. Food always spoils. I think that's good. Now you need to build a granary to store food. An armory to store weapons. It was already hard to get to building like everything that you need. But whatever. Builders are now hired in a separate new building, by the way. Thank you. But even that is like, I don't really understand why this is necessary. Like, until your city is like so large, you're taking up like 50% of the map at least. I don't feel like having... Because the only thing this does is cut down on the distance they have to travel. By the way, peasants and prisoners now settle more accurately near their workplaces. That's good. Well, we'll just have to see. Another update for Wilds. I can't really tell what that might be. There's some monster coming. I think that's about it. Moons. So now we have moons. Once you've finished terraforming your first planet, once on a new moon, you'll be able to terraform it while keeping all your blueprints, knowledge, and equipment. You'll be able to exchange resources between those planets and even automating everything. Just don't see what the point is. Like, it's just more, I guess. But that's not that interesting. Yeah. No. I like this game, but I don't think I'd play it more than once. I was thinking of trying this game, the Thaumaturge. But I think it's a turn-based game, which makes me worried. I will not be playing Expedition 33. Oh well. Nah. It's over. It's over. Hello, hello. Eric Tile Dysfunction. How's it going? Oh, I forgot completely where I was at. I added the action module to update here. But as I was saying, finish never happens. Where is finish? Has ended. That's an action module. So how does this work again? We have a behavior. Does it always use behavior? Like idle. Yeah. Public override. Ooh. This is where. Okay. Still need to see. We're doing something like that. Right? And this is the barrier. The target isn't handled here. The target is handled by the effect. No. The spell. The spell is the one that is going to invoke the effect. The effect is created here. And then the effect has its target object set there. Yeah. So the entire point of this is to create the effect. However, the effect should not be created in the initialize. So if I do this, this is going to spawn the barrier immediately. So this needs to have a duration. Which it does not have. What should I call that? Spell init duration. Does that sound good? I don't know if it sounds good. But then we say spell init duration equals 10. I don't know. How did you do this? Did you like... I don't remember. How do you do this? Func with parameters, C#. Wait, where did it go? Two arguments. Man, I'm so confused. Holy shit, this is fucking ungoogleable. What the hell? I thought I had done this too, but it's not here. Like here it says that I need to do that. And I've tried that. But it's like, no, fuck you. Why? So what does it need to be like? So you need to pass it in like that in the funk. That sucks. I do feel like it would be okay, but I've gone through this before and I don't really know where I've landed. But I do think it's okay for objects to require a position in order to be created. Oh. And then what if we do this in the object database? Dictionary vector 3. Func object access. We're just returning this. And where is this actually created? Uh, Mouse controller. Placement tool. New object. Unit placement data. That's being set here. And the object is being set with mouse tile position. So yes, I think maybe effects should always require that. Something is wrong here, but I don't know. I don't know what. Oh, that's a lot of errors. Um, what was the error I was looking for? Yeah, this. I made a new enum for that. Or I'm using an old enum. LOT action state. Int. This one is a bit of an... Unfortunately, while we have no errors here, I actually didn't manage to figure out much here today. I don't really want to stop now, but... what am I even doing anymore? I didn't take a proper break. I'm not even sure what I am doing. Let's see. Adding the necessity of a position to create effect object. Added object type to objects in order to update effects later. It would be nice to get over these humps, because I feel like every time I take like one step forward, there's like a huge pitfall where I had to like change 600 things. Ugh. My goal today was to get the barrier spell to work, but I didn't even get there. So I need to make sure objects and effects are updating action properly. Something like that. Yeah. Anyway, we'll stop there. Gonna try doing some writing, and then we have a meeting, so. Until next time. Thanks for hanging.